You're staring at a task that's clearly bigger than you expected. You could ask for help, but instead, you sigh, say I've got it, and quietly decide to struggle alone. If asking for help makes your chest tighten or your pride flare up, it's not random. There are specific psychological mechanisms that make help seeking feel uncomfortable, even threatening. It's not just stubbornness. It's not just ego. When you understand what's happening beneath the surface, your resistance starts to make sense. Let's look at what's actually happening in your brain when the simple act of asking feels so hard. When you consider asking for help, your brain doesn't just evaluate the practical outcome. It evaluates risk, social risk. Deep in your threat detection system, help-seeking can be coded as exposure. If I ask, they'll see I'm not capable. Your brain treats that possibility like a small social danger, even if the stakes are objectively low. At the same time, your identity system, the story you tell yourself about being competent, independent, or strong, gets activated. Now it's not just about solving a problem. It's about protecting who you think you are. Your nervous system responds accordingly. A slight tightening in your body, a flicker of hesitation, a subtle urge to handle it alone. The first mechanism behind hating help, it starts with how you define independence. Independence as identity. You've internalized the belief that being good means being self-sufficient. Independence isn't just something you value. It's part of who you are. Maybe you were praised for figuring things out on your own. Maybe needing less made you feel more mature, more capable, more worthy. Over time, your brain linked worth with autonomy. The less you needed, the stronger you felt. Gradually, needing help began to feel like regression. When you ask for help now, it clashes with that self-image. That clash creates psychological discomfort, almost like cognitive dissonance. If you see yourself as independent, but your behavior suggests you need support, your brain tries to reduce the tension. The easiest way to do that is to avoid asking altogether. So at work, you spend 3 extra hours solving something your colleague could explain in 5 minutes, because I should be able to handle this. But identity isn't the only thing at stake. Your brain is also scanning for social consequences. This is the quiet fear that others will judge you as less competent, less intelligent, or less capable if you ask for help. Humans evolved in small social groups where reputation directly affected survival. Being seen as incompetent could lower your status or reduce your influence. Even though your modern workplace isn't a prehistoric tribe, your brain still reacts to potential judgment as if it carries serious consequences. As a result, even a simple request can trigger subtle anxiety. Your chest tightens. You overthink your wording. You rehearse the message in your head before sending it. You try to make the request sound smaller, safer, more justified. You type out a message asking for clarification, then delete it 3 times, worrying it sounds dumb. You tell yourself you'll figure it out instead. Interestingly, research shows that most people don't judge help seekers as harshly as we imagine. In fact, they often see them as proactive and engaged. And yet, even when judgment isn't likely, something else still holds you back. You overestimate how inconvenient or annoying your request will be to someone else. Your brain is wired to avoid rejection, so it runs protective simulations. They're busy. They'll think I'm needy. I'm asking for too much. These predictions feel real, even when they're exaggerated. In reality, people often feel valued when they're trusted enough to be asked for help. But because your mind highlights worst-case scenarios, you start minimizing your own needs. You tell yourself it's not that important. You convince yourself you can wait. You quietly absorb the stress to avoid being a bother. After a hard week, you want emotional support. You consider calling a friend. Then you imagine interrupting their evening. Instead, you scroll on your phone and say, they're probably busy. On the surface, it looks like independence. Underneath, it's fear of imposing. But sometimes the resistance goes deeper than inconvenience. It's tied to vulnerability itself. Asking for help requires admitting a limit, and admitting a limit means being seen in a moment of imperfection. Vulnerability activates many of the same neural systems involved in social pain. If you've ever been dismissed, criticized, or shamed for struggling, your brain stores that memory carefully. The next time you consider opening up, it quietly reminds you, last time, this didn't feel good. So you avoid situations where your weaknesses might be visible. You'd rather endure stress privately than risk feeling small in front of someone else. You tell yourself it's easier this way, cleaner, safer. In a relationship, you feel overwhelmed. You want to say, I need support. But instead, you withdraw and hope they notice. You carry the weight alone because asking feels too exposed. When vulnerability feels unsafe, your nervous system starts searching for stability elsewhere. And that's where control begins to feel much safer. Doing everything yourself creates a predictable system. You know how it will be done. You know when it will be done. That predictability feels calming. Asking for help means surrendering part of that control. It means depending on someone else's timing, priorities, and standards. If you grew up in unpredictable environments, self-reliance may have been adaptive. Depending on others might have led to disappointment, inconsistency, or letdowns. Over time, your brain equates dependence with danger. Collaboration starts to feel risky, not because people are unreliable now, but because your nervous system learned to brace. So you take on the planning, organizing, and problem-solving yourself. You avoid delegating, even when you're exhausted, because at least then, you know it'll get done right. From the outside, it looks capable. Inside, it can feel lonely and heavy. But there's one more subtle mechanism shaping your resistance: how you define competence itself. You've absorbed the belief that competent people don't need help. So if you need help, it must mean you're not competent. The problem is that you rarely see the full picture of other people's success. You see polished presentations, finished projects, confident decisions. You don't see the mentors they consulted, the colleagues they asked for feedback, the drafts that didn't work. Your brain compares your messy middle to their highlight reel. And in that comparison, asking for help feels like evidence that you're behind. So you push yourself past healthy limits. You treat exhaustion like proof of dedication. Burnout becomes a quiet badge of honor. You assume strong people handle everything alone. Meanwhile, that successful colleague you admire regularly consults peers and seeks advice. They just don't advertise it. When you put all these pieces together, hating help makes psychological sense, but it doesn't mean it's serving you. Let's pull this together. You may tie independence tightly to your identity. Your brain overestimates judgment and the burden on others. Vulnerability can register as social danger. Control feels safer than collaboration. Asking for help isn't evidence of weakness. It's evidence that you're human in a social species. When you zoom out, help seeking isn't a character flaw. It's a nervous system trying to protect your status, safety, and self-image. The discomfort you feel is protective, not prophetic. It predicts danger, but it doesn't prove danger is there. And slowly learning to tolerate that discomfort can expand your world in quiet, powerful ways. If this resonated with you, share in the comments what makes asking for help hardest for you. And if you're practicing reaching out, even in small ways, notice the courage in that. You're not losing independence, you're building connection. If this helped you see yourself more clearly, consider subscribing for more reflections like this. You're allowed to need people.
This is nice.
You'll love this one.